I read something in a book last night. In a book. And the main character, he had done something that he knew it was going to pay off later. And he said, I know I've planted the seed, but this is going to come in handy later on. And it reminded me of, how much I've gotten into gardening this last couple years. As you can see here, right? Also, Everest will be familiar with this. The last time, Everest, that you and I were together, we actually planted a lot of plants from seed. Specifically, some of them were these guys. These are called zinnias. They turn into really pretty flowers once they come into bloom somewhere around the middle of the summer. But it just made me think about how a lot of what we do in life, we plant these seeds really hoping for some kind of payoff, for some kind of reward, Most of these plants aren't my first attempts. There were several seedling trays that I went through, and these were really the only that survived out of all of them. And there's some other plants that I could never get to sprout, and I keep trying, right? Because I have faith that that's just the nature of planting. Eventually, if I keep planting, I'm going to get it right. Maybe the conditions weren't perfect. Maybe I didn't give it enough sunlight. Maybe I overwatered it. Maybe it was too cold. Who knows? Who knows? But I do know that these ones have come through, and I know that if I keep trying, so will others. A lot of times in the Bible, our good works and what we're trying to make of our lives is compared to planting seeds and harvesting what they grow. And I just want you kids to maybe consider that as you go on, you're going to find that there's times when you do good, as in you do good in the world, for the world, and you don't see any reward for that. And that may dissuade you. You may consider, what's the point? Why even bother to do that if nobody's ever going to see what I've done here? There's never going to be any kind of payoff for me doing well here. And I want you to consider that such is not the case. No matter how much it may seem to be the case, it's not. And so that's why I keep planting these little seeds, even though they won't grow. Even now, there's some in here. These aromatic herbs are really hard to grow. I've got some, they're either rosemary or thyme in here that you can't even see because they're still so small, but I'm keeping on watering them. And I'm keeping on trying to make sure they get enough sunlight, even though I don't know if this is necessarily the best spot for that. And now that I'm considering it, I may move them later. But what is my point? Back to the point. The point is that there will be a payoff in the end, right? Sometimes it'll take years and years. Even now, I don't give up on these videos because in a way, and that's what really this book made me think of, that quote I was referencing from the book, is that I'm planting seeds here. And I'm watering them by adding more and more videos to this list. And I'm not seeing any fruit right now. And I may not for years. And heck, as I've said in other videos, the payoff may not be until I'm dead and gone. These may not be appreciated until then. These may not be appreciated until, your children, my grandchildren are there to see that these reminders that Granddad was there for our parents. He loved us. He loved our parents. I mean, I hope you guys will see that and realize at least. One example I could give you is, and this really did a lot for me because I was a very rambunctious child. I was ADD like crazy, could not shut up, could not stop getting in trouble. I generally thought kids mostly considered me the annoying kid in school. But last year I had this girl who I didn't even, I mean, I was in a couple of her classes in elementary, but we were never, I don't remember us being buddies or like holding a conversation or anything like that or playing on the playground or anything. And here I was last year considering, man, I mean, it's always in the back of my mind that that's how just people thought of me, as I was just this nuisance. But I get this post on Facebook that I'm tagged in, and it's one of the only posts on my Facebook you can see right now that, from the last couple years, because as I've gotten older and started working, I just don't bother sharing stuff on Facebook. But I let this one on my profile, and she had said that one time in the 3rd or 4th grade, she had really bad, I think it was alopecia or something making her hair fall out. And she remembers, she said, to this day, I don't know what made her think of me. I don't know what it was or what made her think of this incident. But she said to this day, she remembers feeling so down on herself and and feeling ugly and unwanted because of the way she felt about how she was losing her hair. And I can't remember if she was complaining about it to a friend or something, or somebody had said something mean to her about it. And she said she remembered me walking up and saying, you know, you're beautiful in your own way. Your hair, everybody's got their own differences, and that doesn't make anybody any less valuable, or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact wording. But the big deal about that was she said in that post, it stuck with her to this day. And she was 30 years old. Something I didn't even remember. Apparently has made someone view the world a different way, in a better way, a more positive way. Some little seed I planted when I was 8 or 9 years old. This isn't to make much of me. That's not what I'm saying. This is to say, if little tiny things you do like that throughout your life can change a life, can make someone decades later think differently about themselves, how much of a beautiful garden can we grow if that's what we're focused on every day, So who cares if you feel like in the moment that all these things you're doing to try to add goodness to the world are paying off? You may get no appreciation for them at all. You may not even in this lifetime. But what's great is God sees what you're doing. And you will have your reward in heaven. God sees, God knows. And even further than that, those people who may be too shy to say anything later on, you may just be changing lives and never even be aware of it, right? It's not always going to be this big, showy, oh, look, I'm giving a hobo $1 million. Let me record it and put it on the internet. It may just be the littlest of things that you're always doing, or the littlest of things that you can do that stick with people. And in the end, God is going to remember that, and He's going to recognize you for it. Let's see. Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, whatever you do, actually, let me back up to 22. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord, and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So remember, kids, you may not see the forest grow. You may not see the garden grow. You still will be surprised in the end of how beautiful it turns out to be. These seeds started out as little sproutlings. It was effort. It wasn't paying off quickly, but in a couple months, maybe even within this month, you'll see these bloom into beautiful flowers, and you'll see zucchinis coming up from these guys. So work without reward, not being under some illusion that you will never be rewarded. And further than that, let the reward, when you can, be the work that you did. For me to just know that that girl thinks differently of herself, even into adulthood, that does something for me, even if I didn't get public recognition for that. You know, I love you both. God loves you, and I'll see you soon.